Dune Part 2 is finally out in theaters. The question now is, can it save the box office? At the same time that theaters are so desperate for a win, does Dune Part 2 deliver? Or is it more dead than a giant sandworm in a pool of water? Hello folks, welcome back to the Pro Channel. Happy to have everybody out there. We are here to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. Another review of pure excellence on the way for each and every one of you out there, and we shall begin right now. I have seen Dune Part 2, and I'm here to tell you that this is a movie which is going to leave many people elated and excited as they leave the theaters, and others are going to be utterly disappointed. That is because this is a movie which is very distinctly for distinct groups indeed. And so when you go to watch Dune Part 2, you should know ahead of time what it is that you're getting into, because you may be in that group that's going to love the movie. And I dare say that many in the demographics that watch our videos here on the Pro Channel, that you're part of that group. But there are going to be others who are severely going to dislike it. Not only that, but this is also going to help you know which people you should invite to go to the theater with you, although I recommend you invite everybody all the time, of course. Be friendly, but maybe put a little bit of a warning to some of those folks out there who you might identify after this video as not being the sort of people who are going to enjoy this. First of all, I want to say that I took someone with me who is a huge fan of the books, and that huge fan of the books came away not impressed. And unfortunately, that's what I have heard from a number of people who love the books, although not all people. It seems like the first half of this film, well, is very good and people really enjoy it. The second part of the film is where things get rather divisive. I also want to say that my assessment of whether or not you are going to enjoy Dune Part 2 comes down to something very simple. If you are a fan of incredible visuals, if you are a fan of amazing immersion into a different world, if you are a fan of huge set pieces and amazing integration of CGI and practical effects and special effects and lighting and all of it, then you are going to have a feast, a cinephile feast at Dune Part 2, especially if you see it at IMAX, especially if you see it in a premiere location. However, if you are the type of person who you need a very strong human connection, if you need major wins, and if you are desperate for positivity in films and a strong moral message, this will be a harder film for you to enjoy, and I'll explain why. In criticizing this film, what I would say is that to give it a more positive direction for the future and for other filmmakers making something such as this, what this film needed desperately was it needed dreams of the future that are positive or dreams of the past that are positive. It is fine and it's good to have a movie that's set in a war setting or in a dire dystopian world. It's even okay to set that world in a place that's covered in sand and lots of red hues everywhere. And that's fine. But it seems to me that even in war movies, even in movies that are dire and desperate, you need a vision of hope. And so what would have been very nice in this film would have been some breakup moments where, even for just a few moments, we could have seen the green paradise. We could have seen a possibility of the future with water. And instead, it is a very long ride through a lot of sand. A lot of sand. Anakin, be warned. Now, Timothée Chalamet is fantastic in this. Zendaya is serviceable. And there are performances here that are absolutely wonderful. You're going to have a tremendous time experiencing much of the cultural issues here, much of the customs that have been presented here. I do want to give one caveat to that, and that is that there are times during this film when I felt that we had slipped past the point of appropriateness and we were starting to tread, although not completely there, but starting to tread into the realm of parody of Middle Eastern religions, right down to the phonics of the languages that we were hearing. And so that is one thing that I would suggest. I don't know if I enjoyed that part very much. I think we should be very careful about not taking other religions and then using them or satirizing them or doing a pastiche of them for entertainment. I also found it interesting, the idea of the Messiah in this. It's heavily, it's a huge part of the film, the idea of a Messiah the idea of a religious figure. It's straight into the script, the dialogue, and everything, into the exposition. And the interesting thing about this to me is that what Dune Part 2 represents is sort of the opposite end of the coin of the Christian ideas of Messiah, and perhaps the Judeo ideas of Messiah. And by that I mean that this character, the lead character, played by Timothée Chalamet, is distinctly a war-based savior, and he leads his troops into battle, which is the opposite of the peace version of the Christian narrative, and perhaps the narrative that is presented in Judeo beliefs. I also want to say that when it comes to the human connection, there's a significant need in this movie to provide more connection here. Laughter at any point would be greatly appreciated. Smiles would be greatly appreciated. The individual who went to go see the movie with me yesterday made a fantastic point, and that is that movies have gotten really dark. And I agree with that. More of the human spirit needed to be seen in this film. Now, all of that said, when you do a review of a film, you have to label out the things that are less than could be, and you have to be critical of them. But I also have to be very positive about some things as well. There is an immense amount of genius in all of the cinematography of this film. There is an immense amount of creativity that comes straight from the source material, riding the giant sandworms, extracting the living waters, which is sort of an internal baptism system that's also tied in somehow with hallucinatory or perhaps actual religious situations. All of this is incredible. The languages outside of what I assume is meant to mimic in some way Arabic languages, outside of that, I think those languages are very impressive to hear. I also thought that the bonds, B-O-N-D-S, that you find between the characters outside of the main two characters' love relationship was very interesting. All of this is presented in a way that I think many out there will really enjoy. Now, this is going to come down to your proclivities, though, down to your personality traits. And by that, I mean that if you are a very open person, if you're a person that really enjoys new experiences and you like to broaden your horizons, then this movie is going to excite everything that you love about going to the movies. That's where this gets divisive. Because if that's not why you go to movies, if you go to movies because you want to experience a moral lesson or because you want to experience the euphoria of characters succeeding and excelling and goodness prevailing over evil, this is a harder one because there's not necessarily, by the end of the film, a distinct good versus evil. Some will disagree with me on that. But I struggled to find, by the end, truly good people. Truly good people. And that comes down to, again, the fact that this film is all about a war-based Messiah narrative. And because of that, it's hard to find who is the person who will bring in peace and goodness and kindness and hope. That's a very strange thing. Folks, I don't want to give away too much more because I'm trying very hard not to spoil this movie at all, because it is not an exact replica of the source material, of the books. And so, therefore, I'm trying very hard not to tell you exactly what happens, but I would say that whether or not this will save the box office is a much easier thing to do than to tell you whether this movie is good or not. Having seen the movie, I can now say with some clarity that I do not think that Dune Part 2 will save the box office. That's not because it's a bad movie. It's a movie that has a very distinct audience. And those distinct individuals are going to love this film. But it's also going to have a very distinct group of people who do not enjoy it at all. And that limits its appeal. And therefore, I do not think that this is a billion-dollar contender in the way that you might find a Marvel or a Star Wars or anything like that. And I was hopeful that with this Part 2, that it would exceed Part 1 to such a degree that it might get up there. It might get 800, 900 million. I think that's an uphill battle now. And that's a shame. I really was rooting for this film. I really was wanting it to be something that could sort of take theater owners somewhere else, somewhere great, somewhere new for March, and redeem that box office. It's going to fall on Ghostbusters. It's going to fall on Kung Fu Panda now to carry that. Dune, I think, will do fine. I'm not. I know this comes across as more negative than it should be. I don't want it to be. But I also think that there's a missed opportunity here. So many out there are going to love this film and going to take umbrage with my review. But I see that there was an opening here for this film to be much more broad in the audience that would have loved it if it had simply inserted 20 minutes or so of vision for what the world in which these inhabitants live in, what it could be, and the beauty that could be. And had that beauty been there, I think it would have made the darkness all the more dark and the light all the more bright. And I think that would have made the box office really soar. Without that, this is still a work of tremendous art. Tremendous art. But it's not going to have the arc in real life that I had hoped that it would have with the box office. Dune, I give a 7 out of 10. But I say that knowing that some of you are going to give this a 10 out of 10. And some of you are going to give this a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Because again, this is a film that speaks to those who have different personality traits and why they go to movies. It's a very strange movie that way. But that is what Dune Part 2 is, and that is the review here. Remember, folks, this is one of those movies where if you love it, you're not wrong. And if you hate it, you're not wrong. Because it's all about what experience you want when you sit in front of the silver screen. All right, folks, that's the review for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Click like, share, subscribe, and click it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. We reversed that. We'll keep it that way. Who knows? Might be the new way to say it. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about Dune Part 2. And please share. Have you seen it? What's your review score? Is Pro completely right? Is Pro completely wrong? 7 out of 10 is what we're giving it here, knowing that we're threading the needle between the two groups that are going to hate and love it. But it could have been just slightly more. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.
Listen up, my brothers and sisters. You've been listening to fills and those with an agenda to destroy your brain cells for far too long. It's time to change your way of doing things. Hold up. TPP is the place to be. Covering the news, so honestly, it's a team that's cool and tried and true. Ahead of the culture curve, they're trying to keep you. Jonas and Pro, they run the show, and they dragged in the bearded culture casino. You got Valiant and Lord and Fourth of Light. Wonderful people, yeah, they're alright. They got weird bringing in people like Floral, but made no mistake with Lorena Creole. Amelia and John, stuttering guitarist. Martin and Tawny and someone called CMS. Fat Steven makes a bunch of all the graphics. Did I mention a partnership with Bending in the comics? Fat Sky is a guy and Doc Matt does the web stuff. There's probably some people I missed. I hope they're not telling you the news. That should be fun. With accurate info that's not been spun. You can figure it out as you will see. The TPP is the place to be.
Yeah, Wilton. That was actually pretty good, or White. But I think you might have forgotten Vash.
Well, he lost all his friends. But it was implied.